I'd have a better intro. This is episode 52 of Arakko Public Radio, your casual X-Men chat show. I'm that nerdy Papa Bear. This is the man who had the audacity to tweet about Lightbringer being one of his favorite pieces of fiction. The same week Ghost Rider 17 came out, my one and only co-mega mutant, Keegan. How are you, buddy?
I am fantastic because I finally finished Lightbringer, and it made me cry, and I loved it.
You'll be proud of me.
Yeah?
I ordered the first book at least.
Let's go. Okay.
In like a year and a half, I'll be able to relate to you. In this episode, we're talking about half the comics that came out the week of August 16th. That's right. This week is so stacked. We split it in half and are doing 2 episodes. Today, we're talking about X-Men Red 14, Uncanny Avengers #1, Dark X-Men #1, and Marvel's Voices X-Men. And to help us make sense of everything that went down across them, I am so excited. I love talking to you, Keegan, but this is the most excited I've ever been.
Yeah.
We are talking to the multi-hyphenate, the Tik Tok legend, writer, filmmaker, technically the first Marvel employee we've landed on the show, although he just informed me it's only for one more day. Please welcome Nikhil Clayton. How are you, buddy?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
I was so proud to be able to talk about you working for Marvel, and I feel like it's rubbing salt on a wound or something.
I'm sorry. One day, past, present, future employee of Marvel, hopefully.
Are you able to reveal the Marvel Studios production that you were a production assistant on, or is it too far out to reveal that?
No, actually, when does this come
out? Probably Saturday, this weekend.
That's after I wrap. So yeah, it was Loki season 2.
Hey, that's awesome.
Super cool.
So, did you get to meet Owen and the gang? No, okay. I saw you. I think it was on your Instagram. You posted a thing about the VFX union. So were you on the VFX side of things? Were you like?
Yeah, I was the VFX PA.
That's awesome.
I am part of the Marvel group voting for a union.
That is so cool. And Keegan and I are both like big union dudes, so that's cool to hear. I'm excited. All right. We put everybody on the spot. Most of our audience is going to be way more familiar with you than they probably are of some of the other people we've had on. But we ask all our first-timers the same 3-part question. Who are you? What led you to being an X-Men fan? And, how invested are you in the Krakoan age? Because we get some people that are, lapsed fans and stuff.
Who am I? I'm Nikhil Clayton. I do TikTok and silly things about comics on it. What led me to being an X-Men fan, I don't truly remember. I'm pretty sure it's X-Men Evolution and Wolverine the X-Men, the cartoons I had growing up. It's just something I've been in love with since I can remember, which is not saying a lot. I remember up to I was 12. But I think also one of the things is that I had an affinity for Gambit very early on. Before I think I even fully understood who Gambit was, because I liked the name Gambit alone, and then I discovered everything about him and thought that he was the coolest guy, and I still do. So for a long time, the X-Men were what I liked because Gambit was involved with them. But yeah, so I am still here. Krakoan Age, I think, is the height of Big 2 comic telling right now. I think it is a truly unparalleled story. It's amazing.
All right, I got to ask you, because I'm obviously older than you are. So my intro was animated series, and then I watched Evolution. I never saw Wolverine in the X-Men. Is that worth going back to?
It's so good.
So good.
Well, the weird thing is, because I watched these shows when I was a little kid, because I think X-Men Evolution came out when I was born. So I was even seeing that in syndication. But in my little kid brain, I thought it was the same show. And Wolverine and the X-Men is post-apocalyptic. So I was just they're jumping back and forth between high school and the post-apocalypse. This is the greatest show ever. And
the entire series is post-apocalyptic? How did I never know this?
It's not apocalyptic, but it's X-Men apocalyptic. The X-Men are gone. And they're bad thing happened in the past. Everyone died.
I knew nothing about this. No, I was all Spectacular Spider-Man that era. That was because that was my college year. So the one cartoon I gave myself was Spectacular Spider-Man, but I need to go back and watch that for sure.
I remember correctly, and I might not, but if I remember correctly, I believe that is one of the many Wolverine voice jobs of Steve Blum. And I'm real big fan of Steve Bloom. Spike Spiegel, you might know him as.
Yeah.
So I watched it for that.
Fair.
Fair.
I just know it had a really cool version of Cyclops that was like a loner and like depressed, and that the opening few episodes, or the first 2 episodes, I think, are weirdly similar to Logan, to like the point of like the truck of like the country guys stalls with the horses, and he goes like save them or whatever. It's been a while since I've watched it, but this was one of my takeaways when I tried to rewatch it. I was like, this is very akin to Logan.
I'll jump in. X-Men Red, written by Al Ewing, drawn by Yildiray Cinar, opens with Genesis using her ever-mysterious powers to literally wake Arakko, which has slept since Judgment Day. We see the immediate aftermath of last month's meeting and the splintering of the Great Ring. Wildlife is acting erratically. Everyone is on edge. Citizens are stockpiling weapons. In the Red Lagoon, Kobach Neverheld is furious with Lodos for having Lactuca teleport them away, forcing him to retreat from a challenge. Lodos blurts out how he didn't want him to die because he cares for him, which catches Kobach off guard and lowers the tension. Until Sunspot arrives. He's got news of the Hellfire Gala. He lists casualties, some that are actually dead and some that we already know survived. He's still disoriented from fighting off Charles's mind control using Red Triangle, but Storm is able to piece together that Orcus is behind Genesis' return, and she realizes what is to come. War. We jump 10 weeks into the future, into the thick of the war that has completely reshaped the planet, and join the Battle of the Fallen. Nova leads Storm's forces and seems to have an advantage, though Genesis' new seat of loss, Omega Rocket, charges in to change things. His power is essentially perpetual energy. The longer he flies, the faster he goes, and he is allegedly invulnerable. We immediately learn this is untrue when he flies over Iska the Unbeaten's domain, where she has exiled herself and forbidden either side from approaching. She shoots him down with a single arrow through the jaw. The rest of Genesis' Omegas arrive, but are quickly followed by Storm, who immediately clears the skies and destroys the colossal monuments to Apocalypse and Genesis that flank the valley. We get more pages from the new history of Arakko, which reveals motives all around, including Genesis' plans to rebuke Orcus and follow her own agenda. Her forces retreat after the destruction of the statues, and Storm's team return to the Red Lagoon to celebrate a hollow victory and debate Apocalypse's role in things. Storm predicts that the only path left for Genesis is to attack by sea, at which point Fisher King enters to announce that they're ready for it, only he is now merged with Zillow, much like Cable did in the Sins of Sinister timeline, so he's got the half his body warped. Gentlemen, his data pages, the new history of Arakko, are just some of my favorite data pages we've ever gotten, and I really hope at some point we get it compiled as the actual book, like in the back of one of the trades or something, because it's so fun.
That would be so great. That would be so fun. No, Ewing knocks it out of the park. This is like a dense comic. Like, a lot happens in this book. And I joked with you before we recorded. I try to keep these short, quippy summaries, and it is impossible to do with any Al Ewing comic because the dude fills these pages.
Yeah, I mean, so much happens. It's so packed with so many things, and the thing is it's not just like packing a bunch of just stuff in it. It all feels so consequential every time.
Everything here feels like brand new mythology that maybe he just has more of a leash because he's off planet, but I feel like I never can predict what's happening, or there's never a trope to be seen. It's always something to just throw me off my balance just a little.
I think he's great at incorporating older stories, and not even just the ones that like he would have come up reading. Like obviously he's a very big fan of like 80s era X-Men with all his illusions, but even like X of Swords and stuff, he's paying, like Storm has this I Dance with the Devil line, which is just a literal thing that she did. And then the whole thing with the statues from Hoxpox getting toppled, like he's paying off these symbols from books he did not even write that came out right before him. And it helps the whole thing feel very tied together narratively.
We talked last issue about how if we weren't in the middle of Fall of X, this really could have been stretched into a X of Swords 2 like caliber event, and we could have had more. We could have had the tie-ins here because this Genesis war is dense, and there's a lot of opportunity there that I feel like we're gonna miss just because.
I'm very curious what the conversation was when it came to deciding on Fall of X, because his is the only book that I think rightfully so because it's great. But his is the only one that seems like they were like, we have a different thing. Like they came up with the Hellfire Gauntlet, and he was like, yeah, but I got my own big climax that I'm going to. So
I don't want to get conspiratorial, but the news dropping last week of the editorial change that Jordan White's stepping down, it sounds like we really are heading for probably the end of the Krakoan Age.
absolutely,
It could have just been a time crunch thing where he was like, no, I got these beats I got to pay off. Like, I don't have time to dwell in Fall of X, so we're going to make Genesis War overlap.
That said, he ties it in beautifully. Like,
oh, totally.
The fact that they have Orcus setting up the Genesis War so that Storm is busy, and even just like Beto coming back from the Hellfire Gauntlet in this issue is so heartbreaking. And the way he keeps repeating that Sam is dead is so sad.
I know.
Oh yeah.
And then we meet Omega Cannonball, which cracks me up. But there's 2 Sam mentions of this.
Yeah. The Omega Cannonball showing up and then immediately dying was amazing. Him just getting wiped off the board immediately.
I have serious questions for how the Iraqi defied Omega, because it does not seem to be the same. It does not seem to be the same way at all. Because we're specifically told Omega Cannonball is Omega because he's completely invulnerable, whereas Sam is famously near invulnerable. However, he's not, clearly, because he gets hit with an arrow and dies. So, someone's lying.
Okay, so Genesis had, I don't know if it was last issue 4, where she spent the whole issue basically gaslighting everyone. And we know the Great Ring has its big rule of, like, everybody except for seats of night seats have to be an Omega. So it could just literally be she needed someone to fill the seat of loss. So she was like, "Oh yeah, he's an Omega. He gets the seat of loss."
My pet theory, and I didn't come up with this, but it's something that I've seen on the internet, and I think it actually comes from the Cerebro Discord. I don't know, but it's that the way, like, to be an Omega just means like having never lost to the Iraqi. So the reason everyone is on the ring is an Omega is because they have to fight to get on it, and then the reason the night seats are not Omega is because they don't fight to get on it. And then that's why, because like, what is Kobach the Omega of?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So
I jokingly was calling him the Omega Wolverine originally. So
no, because now we have a dog centaur that is supposed to be Omega Wolverine.
That's true.
I love the dog centaur. I joked when that came out. I was like, it's gonna, like, obviously it probably means Omega healing factor, but it's going to, how great would it be if it was Omega hand claws? And then it was he did both. He's specifically the Omega of the Wolverine power category.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
That's pretty great.
I wow, and just the phrase dog centaur. I don't think I had thought of it as a dog centaur, but yeah, absolutely.
I can't think of another way to word what that thing is. It's a 2-headed dog centaur, and that's only Al Ewing, man. Or the art. I actually don't know. But if you just wrote to his artist, it was like, make me a freaky little thing, and they're like, all right.
Speaking of the art, I complained about the artist for the last arc. I loved this. I thought this was a gorgeous book by comparison. Kobach and Lotus, those were love vibes, right? That wasn't just like, oh, you're my comrade.
Yeah.
That was.
They're 100% love. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, once we get to voices, it becomes even more obvious. But like,
Kobach is canonically queer.
Yeah.
I think. I had not, like, I'm sure they said it at the beginning of the series or something, or in X of Swords, but I did not know this man was speaking in haikus this whole time. That blew my mind. They're like, that wasn't a haiku. And I was like, does he talk in haikus? And then I checked. I was like, wow.
It was definitely referenced in Judgment Day. I can't remember if it was referenced anywhere else, but
I always knew that it was like poetic in nature. I don't think I ever connected specifically haiku myself either.
That's good. It worked. The rest of the time, I kept reading. I was like, wow, that's a haiku. Look at that.
Yeah. I want to say Magneto reference. It was definitely referenced at one point. But yeah,
it's definitely not something to bring up right now. So like, I definitely just forgot it. But I was like, wow, look at that. Yeah. Haikus. I gotta be honest, I find all of the Iraqi to be really interesting characters, and I think it's a testament that, like, you can make new powers that are so interesting. Because I kind of was
Yeah.
of the opinion like mutant powers were like we'd capped out, but the Arakko all have great powers. However, it is hard for me to remember what their names are or what it is they do, and
The names can be
especially on
brutal.
especially in the Great Ring. Like I thought the blue dude, the Latus Latuka, or the guy who took the
Lotus
Hawk's Eye
Logos.
too. Yeah, that guy. I thought he was Sabunar until Sabunar started mattering, and then I was like,
Yeah.
oh, fish guy
No.
Sabunar. Okay.
Yeah, Sabinar's like the salamander dude
Yeah.
who betrayed us all last issue after he was my salamander homie until last issue.
But I agree with that completely. Like I was just like, the Great Ring is made up of these characters, and
Yeah. No,
they
it's,
match up somehow.
it's
Well,
I-Man, it's I-Man, Fish Boy, Blue Guy, and that's all I can think of off the top of my head.
The
And
Wonka
Kobach. I know
Stars,
Kobach's name. I know Kobach never held.
Well, and good luck because we're gonna have twice as many now because now we got the 2 rings for a while. So
Yeah, and iBoy left. I know Orosorada too, actually, because I love iBoy so much.
Orosorada is awesome.
I shouldn't call him iBoy. That's a real character.
That is true.
But-
There is actually an iBoy, and I love the actual iBoy. So
I also love the actual iBoy, but Orosorada I also find very interesting.
Something that probably is just appealing to my own personal neurodivergency, but unlike all of the others that have used X weeks as like a vague kind of Marvel sliding timeline thing, this established that it truly is 10 weeks. Yeah, it was 70 days exactly.
I feel like because I listened to an interview with Gerry Duggan where he was like specifically he didn't want to. He was like, it's not 10 weeks. It's X weeks. It's a variable.
So this
And
was
feel
Al.
Like, I feel like Al was just like, that doesn't make sense. That's probably means 10, right? And then just threw it in.
It scratched just the right itch in my brain though, because it does drive me crazy that sometimes we use it as 10 and sometimes we don't. Like I don't mind either usage, but be consistent. If Krakoan it means 10, then keep it 10.
I will always never like stop feeling stupid when someone will call like Hoxpox, for instance, like powers of 10 or powers of X, then I always question myself like, wait, is there is there a right one?
I love how many different things X is. I genuinely like the fact that it's House of X powers of 10 is so funny to me. And it's the same thing. The one I'm mad about is when they did X Lives of Wolverine and X Deaths of Wolverine, but they only published 5 comics each. It should have been 2 V's because they like had it like a mirror. And I was like, that would have been so much better.
I'm very glad you went that route and you didn't say you wanted it to be twice as long because that is by far my least favorite crossover we've had in a while. So,
I loved one of them. I genuinely can't remember which one it is. Not
it was
the time travel one. I like
it was probably Dead's. Dead's was Moira and Lives was the weird travel.
Moira's arc I genuinely really liked. I did not understand the time travel Wolverine situation.
I've gone on record. I love everything Moira from House of X all the way until the end of 10 Days, where she just becomes like a clown. Yeah, just the next tier level when she literally steals skin to get on the island. Like that was the jump in the shark moment for me.
The Banshee thing, my God, I was like, hell yes.
Like
dress up as your ex-boyfriend. Do it.
They just stripped all nuance from her like villain arc, where you could see her perspective or whatever. It just made her pure villain for sure.
Yeah, she's just straight evil now. She's like the evilest evil you could be. The Hellfire Gala also, where she's like got those like lights coming out of her eyes. It's like Moira, like, but it's also kind of like I'm fine with it because Moira, the real Moira, that was the friend, and then had this grand mission, and then she's dead. This is like a robot that has her memories. So I'm fine that the robots cannot like crazy evil. I'm like,
and we'll go full circle at some point, and they'll bring back the real Moira. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes it a little easier to swallow.
Especially one day in like 30 years, there's gonna be this Moira versus OG Moira. It's gonna be like, oh Moira, go fight that robot of you that's out there. And you know what? I'm down for it. I'll read that comic when I'm 50 years old, and I'll be like, I remember this.
I will be in the retirement home by that point. My favorite thing to think about in the sliding timeline in the Krakoan age is the point where we'll look back and the Hellfire galas were like a week apart.
Yeah, once a week. They were just like, yeah, we're gonna do it.
Just every weekend we were having a gala.
To be fair, the X-Men have always had the X-Men have never once given a fuck about the sliding time scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole time they're just like, yeah, no, it's all happening linearly, right? So Kitty's like 30 now, and then they're like, no, because Spider-Man's still 25. They're like, not gonna work for us. Sorry. They're like, because like the other thing with Punisher is he got so fucked by sliding time scale they made up a war for him to be in. Forge to this day is still canonically a Vietnam vet, and they just don't talk about it.
I hadn't thought about that. He
I'm
wasn't
so
stuck with the Punisher. Yeah. What is Cinar? I don't know. What's the name of it?
I don't
vaguely
know.
Asian war. Like,
Yeah. It's like it's something like that. Yeah.
It comes across a little super problematic in the end.
I don't know how I feel about the fake war, but it's okay.
I get the logic behind it. I feel like they could have separated the name more from like real world regions probably. We can't do an X-Men Red issue without a Craig Marshall watch. Craig NASA, he was only on one panel, but it was confirmation that he is still Lulu and Cobb's guardian. I love that guy. I'm such a big Craig and NASA fan, and I'm so glad he's getting out of Dodge.
That one panel also confirms that Peter Corbo is on Arakko, which
hanging out in the port. Like that's
I was like, Peter Corbo mentioned in 2023. Let's go see him. Like, and then the next panel has the port. I was like, is Peter coming back?
Checking in the window, seeing if he's drawn into even the background art. Yeah.
That's just Al Ewing being an absolute nerd.
Oh, yeah.
Because I believe I looked it up because I was like, when's the last time anyone talked about Peter Corbo? And the last time is Al Ewing in Sword. I'm pretty sure.
It would not surprise me. I'm surprised it was even that recent. I was thinking it could have been the first name drop in Krakoa. So, the beginning, Xylo's narration calls Genesis the mother of Arakko, and so I saw the theory online with her plant powers, being able to wake him up. If that's a plant for a more literal meaning, if she literally at some point seeded Okara / Arakko Krakoa. She could be literally their mother because we still don't really know the extent of her powers. We know there's something to do with plant telekinesis, something or other.
That's definitely very interesting. I feel like it's got to tie in to whatever this thing with Redroot is, because they keep talking about how they're going to go get Redroot.
And we have to read an Unlimited comic for it, apparently, but they didn't specify which one. They were just like, check out in a future Unlimited arc, and then we have to wait for it, apparently.
But, that's been one of the biggest dropped plots, I think, of this era. And there's not a lot, to be fair. Krakoa is pretty well connected, but it's just they left Redroot back at X of Swords. And they'd be like, we'll get to that. We'll one day deal with that issue. And then just kept going. But I feel like if we're getting into the origins and calling her the mother of Arakko, I feel like somewhere in that conversation, Redroot's gonna matter.
I think you're right. I think it's definitely going to come up. Probably in Red. It doesn't seem like it fits any of the other Fall of X books. So unless we're getting something next spring that would be a good fit, we'll probably see it pretty soon, I would think.
Hopefully. Well, it's also he's clearly playing with absences on purpose because they mention a lot. They're like, where's Apocalypse? I don't know. And then they just keep going about it. And the fact he's not in the book, he was in the book 2 issues ago, but the fact he's not playing a role, I think is meant to be interesting.
Well, he was only in the Heralds of Apocalypse, right? Technically, he hasn't been in Red, I don't think.
That's true, actually. He's in Herald. That's a good point.
Yeah. Uncanny Avengers #1, written by Gerry Duggan and drawn by Javier Garron. I'm so terrible. Opens with a pre-gala flashback to Dr. Stasis and MODOK waking someone in a revival chamber of sorts, with context clues implying that it is someone tied to the role of Captain America and that they've been gone since before the Krakoan Age began. Offered a chance to join Orcus's cause, the man bursts out the chamber. It's been weeks. X weeks again. Since the gala, Ben Urich is
unknown
skeptical.
amount of time.
Since the gala, Ben Urich is skeptical of the Orcus cover story as one of the few who knew the original Captain Krakoa's identity. He doesn't believe that the current terrorist is Cyclops, and so he's leaking information to someone who can do some avenging. At an Orcus camp in Kansas City, we watch Psylocke and Penance clean house, giving Shadowcat a run for her money in Orcus slaughter. They are interrupted by Steve Rogers, and they are ready for a standoff over their brutal tactics, but instead, he joins them, and with the help of Deadpool and Quicksilver, they destroy the base. He reveals he's reforming the Unity Squad, and he couldn't pick a better fascist hunting team. Rogue finishes out the team. She's like off-site doing some scouting work, but they make sure to show us that she's part of it. Meanwhile, Captain Krakoa has his own team with Blob and Wildside. Poor Blob believes that it's Cyclops under the mask. He needs to finish out his team, though, so he descends into the pit of Krakoa to get the Fenris twins. We see the sewer meetup from X-Men again, this time through Unity Squad's perspective. Quicksilver cuts the meeting short because Captain Krakoa's team is trying to steal atomic weapons. They have a confrontation with Blob, declaring them the new Mutant Liberation Front. The two teams brawl, but when the two captains come head-to-head, Krakoa overpowers America and wrestles his shield from him. Okay, so last week I made the comparison that Children of the Atom was basically the Fall of X version of the Hobbs and Shaw movie with the prison escape. This is Mutant Inglorious Bastards.
I
Like
assume you mean Children of the Vault?
Yeah, what did I say?
Children of the Atom.
Oh, I did. I did say Adam. You're right. Children of the
I
Vault.
was trying to make it. I was like, how is it?
No, you're right. We're talking Children of the Vault and Dark X-Men, or Children of the Atom. God damn. It is late. I'm sorry. I stepped on my own punchline. Children of the Atom, I said, was like Hobbs and Shaw with the prison break scene. This is Mutant Inglorious Bastards. Like, I could totally see this Steve Rogers talking about how he needs his Orcus scalps, like that scene with Brad Pitt. Like, totally. I loved it. That joke would have been way better delivered if I hadn't fucked it up.
It happens to the best of us. It's a long week.
Okay.
What do you guys think of the book?
I have to be honest. I've not read Alpha Flight yet, but of the ones I've read, this was my least favorite. I think.
I think it's easy. I think I'd agree with you.
It's still fun. I don't know. The Unity Squad's never been my bag, but then it had characters I liked on it, so I liked that I loved the fake out with Cap, where they were like, "Are you going to tell us not to kill people?" And he was like, "No."
That was definitely what carried it for me. Most of the book I felt was pretty bland, but the Steve Rogers felt like awesome.
I feel like Deadpool and Quicksilver and even like really Monet and Quanon are not doing a lot. Like Quanon comes out, and it's funny you mentioned Shadowcat. I thought that it was Shadowcat at first, and then it was Quanon, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. She's in this book. And so Quanon, I think, has the most stuff going on along with Cap, but I'm not really sure of any of the other characters' arcs outside of just being there to help Cap.
Mm-hmm.
Which, to be fair, is the first issue. Like, I like Duggan's work, so I'm hoping it's gonna go somewhere very interesting. But right now, I'm just like, all right. Also, Captain Krakoa, I'm getting very confused who he could be. At this point, I think it's literally just evil Steve Rogers. I don't know.
It is. I think it's Hydra Cap, and I think you brought up Deadpool. I think that's why Deadpool's there, because Deadpool was manipulated by Hydra Cap.
Which
so
they mention in this. Like, I think,
they did. They brought it up.
I think it's at this point, it's gotta just be Hydra Cap is Captain Krakoa, which could explain. It would be funny. I just thought of this. It'd be funny if that's why they're going by both the Brotherhood and the Mutant Liberation Front. Is if Hydra Cap just doesn't know what the terms are for these X-Men. He's just like, I'm throwing things at the wall here.
Yeah. I think there's like an off chance they're misdirecting, and it's one of the other like evil Caps from over the years. But Hydra Cap makes the most sense. I think that's the most likely answer.
When he was like talking about how great Baron von Strucker was, I was like,
exactly. Yeah, that was there was multiple winks and nods to original Nazis that definitely implied it was Hydra Cap.
Yeah, I thought with like the Strucker and the Fenris twins, like that, first of all, absolutely. Also him like punching out of the capsule looking so much like Steve's hand coming out of the egg with the shield.
That's a great point. I had not thought about that.
Almost the
but
same
it is
shot.
Very true. Yeah.
I had not made that connection, Keegan.
Oh,
Holy shit. No.
Yeah. It when I saw that, I was like, that's practically the same shot.
Yeah. That's really good evidence.
I think it's gotta be.
I was saying like 90% chance it's him, but I think you just bumped me to like 99.
Especially because they make a joke about it.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Stasis makes a joke like, "Oh, this one's ready to go." Like, I think that's definitely intentional. Is that he's coming out of the egg the exact same way Cap did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and Sinister was there for Cap the first time.
Yep. All right, sealed, signed, sealed, delivered.
But yeah, I thought this issue was like fun enough. I would definitely say it was like my least favorite of what I've read so far, but like I enjoyed it more than I expected to for an Uncanny Avengers Unity Squad comic.
Definitely. Yeah. This was one I had like marked as not particularly hyped for, and that probably helped me enjoy it a little more. But overall, weak.
I'll be honest. The thing I was most excited for with the Uncanny Avengers has been, one, I do really like Duggan's X-Men, and then two, it has so many characters that are like parallels to the cast of Dark X-Men. I had deluded myself that these would be teams that were actively fighting each other all 5 issues. There was never evidence for this. I just convinced myself it would be the case, and then it wasn't, and I was slightly disappointed. But that's on me. That's not on them.
But you know what? It's a good dream. I'll mourn it with you because that's a pretty cool idea.
I'm still hung up on how weird the rollout was this year to get us here, because Captain Kurgo didn't even show up in the actual Hellfire Gala issue. It was all through the Free Comic Book Day preview, and I'm so curious how they're gonna collect this as like one coherent story, because it was all these events happening concurrent to the gala, and I don't know. It makes a lot of pieces for casual fans to like piece together in an awkward way, I feel like.
Because the issue is that the Hellfire Gala this year, I feel like they should have just full sent and made an event like they did the first year.
Yeah.
They tried to keep the single issue thing and instead made the single issue incredibly long, and then had an epilogue in Iron Man and a tie-in in Free Comic Book Day. And it's like, I guess, but also I feel like it could have just been an event.
Well, there was such a good reason to make it like the first Hellfire Gala, right? Where it's a whole event, and now this is like the Hellfire Gala that truly goes horribly wrong. Make it another event.
The one argument really for like keeping it one issue is just that I think it hits harder, genuinely.
Yeah.
Because you open it and it's fine, and then by the end it's not fine. And if that was spread out over like 4 months, I think it would be a lot less of an impact. But I don't know. It was a lot. I think you're right, because it's like, is it gonna go, if you want to pick up Uncanny Avengers, is it gonna go Free Comic Book Day, Hellfire Gala, Iron Man, starting Uncanny Avengers? Because even like Tony and Emma, you have to read Iron Man 8 to know why Emma is his assistant. Like,
you have to read far too many Iron Man comics to understand what's going on. It's
X-Men 24. X-Men 24 was kind of a second epilogue. Like a lot of context was given in that issue. I will say, not like quite devil's advocate, but the first half of 2023, other than Sins of Sinister, was really kind of slow. A lot of those minis were really trudging. And my favorite thing about Fall of X so far is we have hit the ground running. Like, I feel like pace has been on point. Like, we've jumped right into each plot. And that would have that vibe probably would have been hurt by having even a month-long event of the gala. So maybe the one shot was just like our hint that, hey guys, we're gonna move fast now. We're jumping in guns blazing.
I think there was a lot of waiting for the fall in the last few months before it, where they were like, we gotta get it set up. Like they did that Rogue and Gambit mini, and I was just like, what? Why are we doing it? Which is why I was glad I never actually came on the show for that one. I don't like bad talking Gambit comics in general.
We had a lot of episodes that devolved into like, why are we treading water? Why can't we have like stuff that actually has movement to it? That was what a lot of our episodes devolved to.
I did the giant Brood Saga Part 2 that they did with Captain Marvel. I thought that slapped. That was my highlight every month.
I really liked the Captain Marvel half. I actually thought like I thought Duggan's book was hurt by the crossover, but I loved Captain Marvel's half of that crossover. That
Captain Marvel's peak.
Kelly Thompson wrote the better team there. Like, she didn't even have X-Men in the name, and that was a great lineup.
Plus, Kelly Thompson should write Rogue and Gambit constantly. She wrote 2 of the best Rogue and Gambit books, and then she nailed it at Captain Marvel. Just keep her around.
Is she DC exclusive? I know she's launching Birds of Prey. I think she might be done with Marvel for a while, which is a bummer because
that is a bummer.
I love her.
Marvel, keep people.
The real victim here, poor Blob.
Poor Blob.
Yes, Blob was so sad. I was like, how is it? First of all, Fred, you've been around the block, buddy. Like, you have been manipulated. You've been in the bad teams. You were a chill bartender. How did you fall for this again?
I know. Hopefully he can go back to bartending for at least a while before we're truly done with the Krakoa. Hopefully he can get a little redemption.
It just feels bad to me that they're like, yes, look at Captain Krakoa's shitty team that has Fenris, Wildslide, and Blob. Like, Blob deserves more than that.
Yeah, I absolutely.
Like, put Avalanche on it if you want a shitty, like, Blob's not a reject. Blob should be a good get.
Okay, but also, how flattered must Scott Summers be that apparently, if this is Steve Rogers, that he could be mistaked for his physique? Like, I feel like Scott Summers is drawn scrawnier than Steve Rogers usually.
The other thing that was so confusing to me is before this book came out, I was like, I don't understand how Uncanny Avengers is going to work because they're going to know who Scott is. Like, all of these people know Scott. So I was like, the only way this works is it's like Scott's club. Like, how are they not, when he talks, going to be like, I don't understand how Blob's confused. Blob's fought Cyclops for decades.
Maybe
that's probably Cyclops in there.
Okay,
sure.
but so Cyclops wore the Captain Krakoa outfit when he was like publicly dead. So maybe there's like a voice modulator. Maybe that's
he did.
Gimmick.
Maybe he did a good old fashioned Batman.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
He's just,
no, that's
just doing a silly accent. He's speaking in Cockney accent.
I can buy the world doesn't know what Cyclops sounds like. I feel like every
Blob
knows, especially someone like Blob is like
the mutant bartender that's been hanging out in the Green Lagoon for 2 years.
It's like, is it even his chin? Like, do you not know what Scott Summers looks like?
That was what I was saying about the compliment. That apparently he's got the chiseled.
I would not feel complimented if a person I had fought with and against for decades was like, dude, I thought that was you, and point to a completely different man.
If it was a man known for being like the sexiest man on the planet, like if someone was like, "Oh, I thought Brad Pitt was you," I'd be like, "Okay, cool, I'm fine with that." Except
I'd be vastly confused, but yeah.
I liked the Ben Urich like lead-in. I think it's interesting how Duggan is kind of sporadically using. Was the implication his connection was Cap or his connection was Psylocke? Like, who is he feeding information to there?
I got the impression it was Psylocke.
Okay. But he specifically says, like, there's some avenging to do. So that's like what made me think maybe it was the Cap side for the like wordplay. But the issue immediately cut to Psylocke. So that's the only reason.
I don't know, because you're right. It is a little. I liked Urich's whole exposing immortality plot.
Yeah.
I thought that was very. The thing that threw me on this was that the drawing of Ewing is suddenly so much younger than he's been being drawn in X-Men. Yeah. And I was like, who is like sexy Ben Urich that we have right now?
Well, it doesn't help that last time we saw him was in Sins, so he was even older because it was like 10 years later. So yeah, you're right. It was pretty jarring.
That's a good point, though. I didn't even think about that.
But I don't know. I'm a big fan of Ben Urich. I hope I like that he's being used as like an actual investigative reporter, and like his like coming out and revealing the immortality thing was like a big plot point. So I think he's gonna help the sort of propaganda mill that Orcus has, like help counteract that with some big news story. So I feel like it's gonna get carried through. I'm not.
I hope so, because I definitely enjoy the way Duggan writes him. I think he writes a good Urich. Dark X-Men #1, written by Steve Foxe, drawn by Jonas Scharf, opens with Madeline Pryor dreaming of a frozen hell and Grim Reaper holding Havoc's headgear. She wakes in bed with him in the Limbo Embassy, now towering over New York City. Turns out protesters are outside 24/7 ever since the gala. She leads him to the Mercy Crown, which is her like demonic equivalent of Cerebro. She explains that she only felt Jean's death on that fateful night, not hundreds of thousands, and that means surely the rest of the mutants are alive out there somewhere. While she does her searching, we catch up with the children of the Atom, who have been rotating Carmen Cruz, Gimmick, the only real mutant from the team, between their homes, disguised as a different one having a sleepover to hide her from Orcus. Buddy's dad catches her mid-transformation, calls in Orcus, who comes and collects her. She's rescued by Gambit, Archangel, and Maggot, but Orcus has backup, including that lovable Wolverine android, Albert, Maddie, Havoc, Azazel, Nightcrawler's dad, I can't pronounce it, Template, and Zero show up as surprise backup, and Gambit isn't sure what to make of it. Albert stabs Havoc through the throat, and Maddie retaliates by crushing him like a tin can. The X-Men decide to retreat, and Zero decides to keep Albert. Archangel is taken by Orcus. He's delivered to a black site, which is revealed to have the true Goblin Queen, which looks like the Maddie from the Secret Wars: Inferno mini from 2015. A post-credit backup reveals the first week of Havoc's tenure as the Goblin Prince, as Maddie establishes her new rule over Limbo and the new relationship with the U.S. government, and possibly the worst drawn Havoc ever in the very last panel. Like, what's his face there? If you guys have the issue open, the art there just threw me for the biggest loop. He's like,
the art for all of this was throwing me for a loop. I was reading also apparently the intention, like it's supposed to be very stylistic people.
Okay, so the main story, I dug the art in the main story, and then I don't know if that was a different artist or just different take on from the same artist in the kind of backup feature.
I feel like it's the same guy.
It had a tone shift to me, but especially the very, very last panel of the last page, he's like making, I don't know if it's a grimace or there's a weird face going on.
It's like a smile. He's so happy. I really liked this book. I thought
I loved it.
I loved it, especially up until the post-credit scene. The week of Havoc, I found
unnecessary,
confusing. I would say. I just didn't understand why it was structured like this. Like, I feel like put this at the beginning. Like, I don't see a reason for it to come after the Maddie reveal.
So, my guess is, and it's boring compared to the rest of it. So they were like, it probably was written as the intro, and then they moved it to the back.
It gives so much information.
It does.
Azazel and Emplate, like why they're there. Like, I don't see.
It's important context, but Yeah.
Plus, then you have like, you know what? You said it was probably written at the beginning and moved. I think that has to be true because then you literally have Madeline like abusing the fact that Havoc wants purpose, then the dream of her killing Havoc. Like I feel like that flows way better, but good substance. I just don't understand the format at all.
Yeah, it didn't make sense as like a stinger. I'm like, why is this?
It was long for a stinger. We've gotten a couple post-credit scenes in Fall of X, but they've all been a lot shorter than that. It was like a full-on like 9-page backup story.
I mean, it was funny. I enjoyed it. I feel like this was just not like I think people were worried about, but it cracks me up to think that like Captain Krakoa freed the Fenris twins, and then they went and tried to get Embassy.
Yeah.
And then they got shut out, so they were like, all right, we'll go back to Captain Krakoa.
Well, yeah, because the flashback would have placed it right after Dark Web, which would have been before they were captured in.
Oh, that's true.
What was the story where they got pitted? It was the Bishop one. Was the War College. So it would have been before then, but it is funny.
Never mind that. I got my timeline wrong.
No, but you're still right, because what that means is they went for like clemency, were denied it, and then went and joined Orcus instead. Once they joined Orcus, they got pitted, and then ended up getting on Krakoa's team.
Another thing from the stinger at the back, I loved all the cameos. I like that we got to see Infectia again, and then she's like, I accidentally did what I did in the 80s that made Beast blue again to everyone. Can I hide out here for a little bit? Like that's hilarious. Actually, she doesn't make Beast blue. She makes Beast smart.
Yeah. Do you think that's maybe why it was moved to the end? Because it is a genuinely like comedic Like,
Yeah, it
leave.
does. It's like you said. It's a very different tone. It would be very. I think it would flow narratively to have.
Yeah, it would make sense
the Sunday
narratively.
and then the dream, but it would have been like a stark POV shift when we got to Maddie's dream. Just suddenly everything is very dark.
Well, and I'm guessing the overall story is probably going to match more the bulk of the book. And
Yeah.
so by giving it as a backup, it's like saying, okay, here's this quippy little tiny thing that's separate. So they're able to have a completely different tone.
The book. No, but the actual meat of the real story I found so fun. I love this team of Gambit, Archangel, and Maggot. I would pay serious money for a mini exploring how that happened and what they've been up to these X weeks, because I don't understand how you get those three together to be hero vigilantes at all.
But I immediately I was like, I don't know how, but I love it.
Exactly. I'm like, fuck yeah. Gambit and Maggot, have you ever been in the same panel? I don't know, but you guys look like buds now.
I am very convinced that part of the X Weeks gimmick is we know the X Office is in love with the nostalgia minis right now, and that's just leaving room so 5 years from now they can be like, oh yeah, here's what happened before the fall.
I would fucking love it if they were like, this is just Gambit, Archangel, and Maggot saving random mutants in this X week span. I'd be like, $5,000.
Yeah.
I
mean, you got other stuff where like you could show what Bishop's been up to with all his little like recon missions he's been doing.
X-Men, they love a time jump. It's a fan favorite thing.
So Maddie, when she took Cerebro, you were talking last conversation, Keegan, about like poses that were similar. Mm-hmm. She was full on first Charles pose, and then she was standing like Jean. I think it's really an interesting move that she's like, yeah, her searching for everyone is altruistic in that she wants to save everyone, but she's also still not fully like moved on from her dark web like inferiority complex, that she clearly is trying to take Jean's place in the like mutant hierarchy.
The other thing I liked is Gambit calls Maddie Red, which is what he calls Jean Grey, and she's immediately like, "Don't fucking ever do that."
You'll wish I left you here.
Yeah. Immediately was like, absolutely not.
I definitely, for being, and I know you. That's like our biggest interaction on TikTok, Nikhil, is you calling me out for my dislike of Gambit generally. I liked the way he was written here so much better than he was in that Rogue and Gambit mini we just read. I think that was the most infuriating version of him I've ever read.
Gambit is a very interesting character, I think, because he's a character you have to, like, the whole shtick of him is that he's got this mask of carefree, fun, doesn't give a shit, womanizing guy. And then, but you have to acknowledge that that's a mask, and that underneath he's like this angst-ridden sad boy.
Yes.
And a lot of times when Gambit's written more poorly, in my opinion, they forget that, and they just play with him as if he's the fun, carefree rando guy. And I don't think that ever plays as well. But this one is like, it's a good balance of both. Like, you understand, even from just the short interactions Gambit has, that there's more of a pathos to him than just, I'm here to get laid.
Well, and he's separated from his love. Like I think there's always a boost to both him and Rogue when they're unwillingly or not together.
Agree. I think Excalibur is my favorite of them, like on a team together, the recent one. Because and then the minis, the Kelly Thompson minis, Rogue and Gambit, Mr. Mrs. X, are fun. But they're not like on a team, they're just like hanging out together. And I love that interaction as well. But when it comes to like being on a team together, I think, because then otherwise you get like Rogue and Gambit, the one that just came out, I guess Volume 2, and it's all just about like, oh, but don't they hate each other, kind of? And it's like, no, they don't have to do that.
well, it's they hate each other, and then they're willing to talk about their relationship issues through text with Rocket Raccoon and Storm. And then
the Storm one I did love. I really like anytime it's remembered that Gambit and Storm have this like best friend sibling relationship. I did, because the idea that Storm is an all-powerful goddess who's dealing with a civil war. And
Where she stopped with a text.
And her shithead, like, little brother, essentially, is like, oh, I got my problems too, fam.
I hadn't thought about that context at all.
Hilarious.
There's something really funny about, like, the idea of Storm being, like, at a Great Ring meeting and just being like,
Yeah, because it's also
Remy,
like,
what now?
I found a lot of the text conversations in that book to be not very in character, like how they did Mystique and Raven, or Mystique and Destiny and stuff. But the Storm one I thought was great. She's like, just shut up, just like do it, just talk to your wife. I'm busy. Like, what is happening?
But where I was going was my issue is still they never did. Like they got all the advice from everyone of like, you should talk about it. You should deal with your problems. And the end of the 5-issue arc is just them being like, I made you gumbo. And they don't actually talk about the problems with each other.
I could go on for this about this comic.
I know. I'm derailing. I'm sorry.
There's a pivot in the fourth one that I appreciated because it's in the Storm convo where Storm calls Gambit out and says, all this pretense that you're upset that Rogue's on a X team and you're not is bullshit. You're just like having an existential crisis because you died recently. And I was like, that's a way better thing. Like, I could get behind that as a nugget. Like, it doesn't make any sense for him to give a shit that Rogue's on an X-Men team, but he's not. Since when has Gambit ever given a fuck about being on an X-Men team?
That's very true.
But I was like, that makes more sense. But then to your credit, they never, like, he doesn't deal with that.
He doesn't deal with it at all.
I was like, cool. A better reason for him to be acting this way. And then immediately he's like, all right, well, I guess I
made you gumbo.
Yeah.
like that's just forever gonna be my like joking. Like we're not gonna actually resolve anything. I made gumbo. Like
down to they love each other, so they love each other, which is not that satisfying to me. You have to do more. But anyway, in this, I loved him. For like the 10 there's that one opening panel with him where like you see whatever he threw. I think they're like jacks or something. I don't know. But he threw at the truck to derail it, and it's like the silhouette of him just standing there like casually, and like the cloak's blowing in the wind. I was like, that's fucking cool.
That was a good shot.
Got style points.
Steve Foxe, I guess you got to give the artist a lot of credit there, but Steve Foxe is someone that I really hope is a mainstay in the X office now because he did that really good annual earlier in the year too, and then this, and just I want him.
I hope so too. I have not read yet Marvel Pride, which I know has Gimmick in it. So this was my first time seeing Gimmick since Children of the Atom.
Yeah.
And I found her I like Children of the Atom for the most part. I think I fell off a little bit near the end, but like I think that she was done very well and her story is interesting. I like that we're kind of back to this help I saw a mutant kind of status quo.
Yeah.
And I'm curious. I've been waiting to see what the relationship between her and Gambit is going to be because she was the Gambit of her team.
That's what I was going to say. The funny thing about the Pride issue, which was a nice little story, but the funny thing was she was still on the island running around in her Gambit cosplay. So I thought it was interesting.
I think it's going to come up because she's like clearly embarrassed when she says Gambit.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single reason Gambit knows who Gimmick is. So I don't think that's enough for him to be like, oh, you're the one who used to cosplay me. But they got to talk about it eventually. Like, that's such...
Well, it's sliding timeline. She was still cosplaying him a couple weeks ago because Pride issue would have only been right before the fall. So it's not like she gave it up. Yeah.
It's in the first week part. They have a
tie-in. Was she still in the issue? Was she still in the outfit?
Well, no, but they have a tie-in to the Pride issue. This the little check out Marvel Pride.
Yeah, check it out. Yeah, you're right. That's fair.
But so yeah, that's the interaction I'm most interested in is how those two characters are going to relate because it's like I don't think we ever learned in Children of the Atom why Gambit.
How they picked who they went with. Yeah, I don't think we ever did learn that. No. I'm curious how much the rest of the children will play in. Like, they gotta be feeling guilty as fuck, right? Like, her girlfriend's dad just turned her into Orcus. Like,
I liked the book fine, but the message of the book is that those kids kind of suck. And I'm still of the opinion that those kids kind of suck. So I'm not dying to see more of them.
No.
Gimmick is fine. I think Gimmick, like, you should even look more back on how badly they would be mutants now. It'd be like, that was a little fucked up, guys. Especially. Like, apparently your dad's a big anti-mutant bigot. Like, what were you doing? I don't know. So I think they're gone. Keep Gimmick and the X-Men, the Children of the Atom themselves. Goodbye.
Okay. Is there a different theory for who True Goblin Queen was, or that is the Secret Wars Maddie?
Totally don't know.
That was just such a weird. That was a weird poll.
I know this again because I've just binged all of the Cerebro podcast, and he's obsessed with Madeline Pryor, the guy who runs that. But there's apparently like the Red Queen is a character that pretended to be Madeline Pryor for a long time, and it's like confusing where the switch happened. So based only on that, as that's who I assumed this character was. I do not actually know what that even is because apparently it's from the X-Men, like Nate Gray comics.
Yeah, and I don't think I don't think she visually had like the demon look that like this character art wise looks like the Secret Wars, but that doesn't mean anything.
I trust you. My knowledge of Maddie Pryor is from Fall of the Mutants to Inferno, and then again in New Mutants in 2020. Like
that's totally fair.
That's what I got from Maddie. I'm excited for her to have it a book though. Good job.
Yeah, good on her.
That's we have a couple members of our kind of group that come in on guests every now and then. They're like giant Maddie fans, so we're very happy for them. They get their girl.
Yeah, they get their book. Good for you.
I'm happy to be excited for a Maddie book the way they are because like
we shit pretty hard on Dark Web, so it's nice to have one that we're enjoying.
Yeah.
I think it's.
I think it's great.
Maddie's a character you can do so much with, and she's such like she's perhaps one of the best examples of a character who got screwed over in the narrative.
Yeah.
But then gets this like great meta narrative vengeance arc. Like she's rallying against her own story, which is so fucking cool. Yes. Like you don't see a lot of like girlfriends get fridged and then 40 years of storytelling afterward is how that was fucking stupid. And that they're mad specifically that it happened.
Vida's New Mutants run with her was just amazing. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Which is part of the reason Dark Web infuriated me so much is it undid it.
I only read Dark Web X-Men and I was fine with it. I liked the whole Jean and her interaction in it. But it was very jarring to read that amazing run where Magic's like, if I trust you, are you gonna screw us and turn evil? And Madeline's like, that's fucking dumb to say. And then open up Dark Web, and she's like, "Guess what, guys?"
Yeah.
But also, like, Jean did like the best part of Madeline's character is she's right. Like everyone screwed her. Jean screwed her. Scott screwed her. She got absolutely fucked. She deserves. It's even in this issue. I think it said it's like a life of envy and wrath. Well deserved or something. I was like, yeah, that defines her very well.
Yeah.
She's done evil things, but of anyone, she really deserves to. She got the most fucked possible.
Speaking of getting fucked, I did like that Steve Foxe kind of threw shade at Dark Web because there's that scene where she visits Chasm, and he calls her out on the thing that all fans called her out on at the end of Dark Web of like why wouldn't you ask Peter to make the same offer? Like he was the only one that got punished for it, and I feel like that was Steve Foxe like throwing us a bone for all of our venting that Chasm called her out on the exact shit we all were upset about 6 months ago, 9 months ago. God, time flies. Jesus.
Wow,
time does fly. I dated something May today. I was like, today is May.
We're 3 days from my daughter's turning 2 months old, and I have not had an unbroken streak of sleep since before they were born. So I'm realizing like I have not actually had a full night's sleep in 2 full months, and it's something to think about. Any other thoughts on Dark X-Men other than it being really good?
I hope we see more Maggot. I feel like they will. I think he's just on the team, which is nice. I was a little disappointed with Alfred. I thought Alfred was going to be more of a character. It seems like he might be a puppet.
You mean Albert?
Albert, yes.
Yeah.
He had a really cool intro, and I was like, oh, how's he going to join the team? The answer was like, kind of not. Like, Zero's going to do whatever Zero does.
Maybe Zero's just going to reprogram him, and maybe we'll get a goofier version of him.
He's a meat guy, though. I don't know if he's just going to reprogram him.
Is he just going to ride him?
He's not like a tech dude, to my knowledge.
That's fair. I guess unless he's going to use it like an Iron Man armor, like he's just going to wear Albert, I guess.
I don't know. I'm a little concerned. But I was like,
Because
oh,
you're right.
also,
His intro was sick. His intro was cool.
his intro
and
was so
then-
he fucking guts Archangel. Also, I love that they just leave Archangel in the alley. Like, it's got a very Hellions vibe of these characters aren't like the best people, so they do
Yeah.
some like things that are just like even the subtle things are questionable. Like they all get together, like, all right, let's go back to Limbo, and they just leave
Leave him
a
there.
bleeding out Angel. And part of it's a little odd because it's like, yeah, but you're allegedly a good person. Mag-
We're only like 3 months
Havoc-
removed from him
Havoc
handcuffing a waitress to an oven.
He was having a silly little guy moment.
Havoc is also allegedly a good person. I do think though it's
Yeah.
also like so pointed that Azazel is the one who's just like that's not relevant because like I don't think we're gonna get into the Draco in this series, but like his whole thing was like his people versus Angel's people are like the
Yeah.
end all be all. So he's like, all right, well he's dying. Everyone else could come with me, and I'll port us out of here. Yeah. So that's the subtle shit like that I really love. Also, there's a thing on it that says Mastermind and Lady Mastermind, as opposed to the Ladies Mastermind or anything. Which
Yeah.
very much intrigued. I don't keep up with the Masterminds. If
Neither
one
do
of them
I.
took the title earlier, okay. But if this is like, because I don't even know what real Mastermind's up to. Is she
Yeah.
Mastermind? Like I don't know.
She might be now. I'm gonna have to Google after this. Marvel Voices X-Men #1, and I didn't do like full-blown summaries, but I wrote out what each story was. So, Stolen Night by Raphael Draccon and Jethro Morales is a Gambit and Rogue story about a date between them. She's mad he took her brawling in the Thieves Guild for a date, but in the end, it's revealed he was stealing back the motorcycle and her dress from their very first date. Team Building Terrors by Sarah Kuhn and Jorge Corona is Jean and Emma at the beginning of the Krakoan Age, bonding in a carnival and stuff attacks them. The Man with No Shame by Al Ewing and Gustavo Vargas is about the Iraqi discovering pride. Kobach and Solom seem to be fighting, but in the end, they're really flirting. I love that story. Cryotherapy by Jay Jordan and Wilton Santos is a fight between Storm and Bobby Drake. It's got kind of a sweet little ending. Hollywood Ending by Greg Pak and Daniel Bayless is a Jubilee and Yoriko story about forgiveness. Evil Mutants is Jay Adedin and Nina Vaqueva, exploring Destiny and Mystique in an absolute heart-wrencher. And Through the Years is a scrapbook by Jan Bazaldua and Marcelo Costa. So to me, the two standouts were the Al Ewing Pride story and the Destiny Mystique. Those two are I love those stories.
I would think I really liked the Storm v Iceman one.
Okay.
Probably
That was fun.
I am mutuals with Jay Jordan on TikTok, and so I've been seeing his
nice.
promotions for it. And Jay Jordan? I don't know. Now I sound like a bad friend. But anyway,
it's with a U, so it's probably Jordan, but I don't know.
Jordan. But so I was excited for that one for a long time. Obviously, I liked the Gambit one at the beginning, and then but the Al Ewing one I think is the standout of all of them. The fact that we can now have a fun Pride anthology or just a Voices anthology where one of the things is a story about Solemn and Kobach Neverheld is these are just X-Men characters, you know?
Yep.
So pick your favorite X-Men. Gambit and Rogue get a story, Jean Grey gets a story, Kobach and Solemn get a story. That's so fun. I loved that. Also, the nicest version of Solemn that I think we've ever seen.
Definitely.
I was under the impression that Solemn was like the devil, but cool. The whole time I thought Kobach was just gonna be like, "No, I'm mad at you because you're evil, not because you're gay."
Apparently, he's slightly more horny than evil, so
so it works out.
You know, you said that about how cool it is that we're able to just have these characters here. I also think it's really cool that even though we have a separate Pride anthology, that we can have just a Pride story in another Random Voices anthology, and it's just whenever we want, we can throw in a Pride story now, and it's just a thing. I think that's really cool.
It's great. I loved it. I would say the only one I didn't really care for was the Jean Grey Emma Frost one.
Yeah,
I didn't particularly care for that one either.
Well, I feel like
I
the
just-
timing of it was weird too, just with where those characters are now. I didn't need to see them
the
like bonding.
characterization I found very like
Almost
not, like,
infantilizing.
I was not like either of them really. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, Jean Grey's the upbeat one and Emma's the sourpuss. It's like, I guess, but also, are they even buds? Like, look at this, really?
Yeah.
Um,
Like I don't think they hang out like that. They seem more like work friends.
Jean Grey once tore open this woman's mind. I don't know if they're hanging out eating donut things. I cannot begin to pronounce what that thing was called.
Yeah, Emma has a line where she's like, "You know, I can read your mind too." That felt so not Emma. It was just like a sassy Valley Girl line.
It felt
for
it
sure.
was a very, I think, like, obviously it's an anthology and it's one of these voices books, so it's like more about having fun, showcasing talent than it is like lore.
Yeah.
So I understand that, but it did feel very like webtoon fanon kind of.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
webtoon
that
is
you
such
nailed
a good.
it with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I will say, just because you said that, I do love the amount of people that get their shots here with these voices anthologies. That it's people we wouldn't get to see otherwise. I didn't mention it in here, but we did get an introduction that was really well written by Vida Ayala, who we mentioned earlier, and I miss her writing in the X book office more. So getting that kind of intro was really cool.
Wish she had stayed. Like, I love CGA a lot, actually. I loved Lethal Legion, but I would read Vida writing the New Mutants forever.
Very similarly, I had fun with the Gambit in Rogue One. I thought that was fun. Like
It's cute.
It's cute.
I liked it.
It's fun. You guys heap your praise.
It's cute. I like them being cute together. I love Gambit. Little guy supremacy all day. Secretly tortured little guy supremacy.
My thing I really liked about that issue too
Yeah.
is it goes back to one of the oldest tropes of Gambit and Rogue, which is that fucking date. Because Gambit wins that date in, I think, like X-Men 2 or something, by playing basketball, and then they are attempting to do it all the time. They're just like, all right, well, time for that date, and then it doesn't happen. And then I think it does. Like the famous one of Rogue, like Gambit picking Rogue up, that cover where they have dinner after Ileana dies, I think is also supposed to be that date. But I love that they're just like, let's go back to the oldest trope we have of these two.
Yeah.
And it's about going on the first date again. And my only Odessa Drake saying you're not the king anymore threw me for infinite loops. I was like, what a deep lore drop. Someone, Marvel, I beg you, tell me anything that happens in these guilds ever. Just let me know how the guilds work and what they're currently up to, so I understand who's in charge. Because I don't. They're retconned every time they show up, even slightly. And it's just like, oh, Gambit's not the king of thieves anymore. Okay, sure.
Just throw up a data page as the Wikipedia page of like the lineage of the.
I tried to track the guilds, and it almost broke my brain. It's insane. It truly, every time they show up, they're retconned doing working a different way than they previously were, and you're just like, okay, great. There's a hilarious line in X-Men 8 where like the whole concept is introduced, where Belladonna shows up and is like, he's part of the Thieves Guild. This is the first time it's ever come up, and Remy's like, and Jubilee's like, whoa, that sounds very intense. And Remy's like, no, that's just what we call like a gang in Louisiana. It's just what we call my family. It's not anything big. And then it's like, oh, is it Gambit? Is it nothing big? Oh,
yeah, that's that good stuff. But yeah, exactly though. It's just fun, and I had fun with it. But aside from that, just being fun, I did think that Al Ewing's story was the standout. I had a lot of fun with Storm and Bobby.
Storm and Bobby also possibly canonically state, like, not as much as I had hoped. I was really hoping that it was going to finally nail down Storm is canonically queer. And there's the other one is you line, which is like, I still think wishy-washy enough that they don't have to say that she's canonically queer. But like, she does call herself a gay icon, in a roundabout way in this story. I was like, come on.
I think they continued their dance. They dance around straight up saying it, and I think this was a continuation of that dance that someday they'll fully embrace it.
One day. It's baffling that Storm is canonically straight. Like, that is just ridiculous. And if you write this whole book, and like, I know, based on his TikToks, that Jay Jordan knows like if it was up to him, I'm sure she would just be saying it out loud.
Yeah.
But, like, if you could write a whole book with like the whole kind of joke that you're not saying is that both of these people are gay, but like have to dance around it, still be like, but that one's not technically. She's straight, and at the end they have a joke about like who's the better kisser, and it's 3 guys, and it's like, you stop it, you know.
Yeah.
I don't blame him for that. I blame Marvel. Let it happen.
That's an editorial thing that I still think. I think within our lifetimes we're gonna get it. She will be canonically queer by the time I'm in that retirement home I referenced.
By the time I'm dead and buried, Storm will be queer.
It's just so bad. The Destiny Mystique one, I did love that. Yeah. I love revisiting the 80s stuff or 70s. Actually, I don't know when Freedom Force was happening off the top of my head.
I think 70s. I think you're right.
Yeah, I think that's
but
right.
To go back and look at a scene from that, which I'm pretty sure he took like pretty like direct from.
I think you're right. I think it was kind of scene for scene and then added context. Yeah.
And then you go in and you say that yes, they were wives the whole time. This is so beautiful, and it's like to see that side of it. Everyone knew about, but we weren't allowed to see back then, and to see that little scene that literally could have just been cut was so sweet.
Yeah.
And it's also one of those things like comparing their queerness to their like not being an assimilationist in the mutant way. I found like that's such kind of always been Mystique's vibe.
Yeah.
But to see it like literally get to be spelled out of like we are lesbians, how could we ever be like everyone else, is so refreshing. And I love that we finally get to see that kind of stuff.
I think I had the most fun with Al's, but I think that was the most powerful for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, there's the Jubilee one.
It was okay. It was
fine. Yeah, it was fine. It was, if you care about Jubilee and her aunt.
Yeah,
it's pretty nice. I know that that's like a big drop plot. It's like from forever ago that Jubilee has an assassin aunt, and then they never carried it out. So for the people who were really worried about that, settled.
What was the 8th book out this week, Keegan? Because my note, I have the wrong one there. Because I list voices again.
I don't.
Oh, Iron Man Annual. That's the one I didn't put in here.
We don't have to remember that.
We're gonna have to talk about it because Storm fights Tony, so we have to talk about it.
Storm fights Tony.
Yeah.
What?
So
I guess she doesn't know
the
about
annuals.
the Sentinels.
Well, the annuals are all this
contest
of chaos.
No, it's got nothing to do with Fall of X. It's the one where it's Agatha Harkness is basically forcing 2 heroes to fight over finding an orb, and then she brain controls the winner. So far, we've only gotten one. It's Wolverine is currently under Agatha's control in this crossover. It's not good so far. Nikhil, don't feel like you have to go chase it down.
It's
no.
Like, is that like is he under Agatha Harkness's control right now? Should I know that?
No. This is either before or after Fall of X. They haven't even bothered to specify when this is taking place, but no, because like when he's under her control, he's like purple, and so this is a completely separate crossover that happens some nebulous time either before or after everything else going on.
It feels very much like someone was like, "What if we did a DBZ tournament but with Marvel characters?"
That's definitely.
Well,
so.
I don't know if I read that, but I like Iron Man 8, and I have considered reading Iron Man. It's just, I went to the store, and I was like, I need the X-Men books. They plopped down an obscene amount of books on my thing this week, and I was like, I can't get Iron Man. Like,
this week was a lot.
That was so many books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, tune in for part 2, where we're going to talk Alpha Flight 1, Ghost Rider 17, Iron Man Annual number 1, and X-Men Days of Future Past, Doomsday number 2. So, and we'll be doing our big annual, like, yay, we finished a whole year celebration.
Yeah, congrats,
so,
by the way.
Thank you.
Tune in. So
I can't believe we made it.
barely. We had some very late episodes. Nikhil, this was like a dream come true. If you go in and you sort my TikTok follows by like how long, you were the first follow you inspired me to like actually make stupid little videos.
Speaking of which, I love your skit with Stasis.
That was like that was the lowest effort skit ever, but
I've considered like the fact he's an HR person is so funny to me. I've thought about trying to make a skit of him doing HR stuff for so long.
Yeah.
And
I don't understand how he could be the public face. Like, it makes no
I don't
sense to me
get-
that all
no,
the public
here's
faces of Orchestra.
Part of the reason that's damning the X-Men is that they leaked the Sins of Sinister thing, so everyone knows who Sinister is. How is he's
Makes
the
no sense.
same guy?
Yeah.
Like, at least Mother Righteous and Orbis Stellaris look different. They look identical. He is Sinister.
One of the other guys is MODOK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know MODOK, surely. MODOK's not a great guy.
Yeah.
How is anyone falling for this? You should have fake people. Like,
Definitely.
it's so strange to me that he's like, yes. And he signed up things like in Gene Solidarity, Dr. Stacy. Like, who's buying this?
Apparently, the vast
even-
majority of
He
people.
doesn't even look human. None of them look human. He doesn't look human. MODOK doesn't look human. Nimrod's not human.
Apparently, androids are cool.
They are
Yeah.
though.
I mean,
Nick
Nimrod was
Hill.
always kind of like the hero. Like, so,
Yeah,
whatever.
that's true. But yeah. Where can people follow you? How do people stay in touch with all the cool things you do?
Nikhil Clayton on TikTok. Nikhil Clayton on Twitch. I'm trying to use that one now. Soon to be probably Nikhil Clayton comedy on YouTube. I didn't have the handle. YouTube sucks. And then
Wait, someone's like
no,
posing
I
as
do.
you, or
I do, but it's from like when I was in 8th grade. And it doesn't have my videos on it, so I need
Gotcha.
like another one. Instagram, I'm real Nikhil Clayton because of a similar issue. But those are the places where I'm at. Just look up Nikhil Clayton. I'm the only one. You'll get several accounts. They're all me. Just find the one that has the most recent stuff.
If you're on TikTok especially and you don't follow him, you need to. He's like the
Should.
voice of X-Men comedy and really just Marvel comedy in general. And I think you do some DC, right? You
I
tip your toes into.
used to do a ton of DC. I did Adams in Gotham, which was a big thing. And then since I ended that, I've not done so much DC because I've always loved the X-Men. I've been hyper fixated on the X-Men like nothing else for the last like year. So it's all of my mental space. I'm reading like 3 different eras of them at a given time.
That's awesome.
I am so in. This is why we're trying to make Twitch work.
Twitch.
I don't use Twitch very often, but I will make sure I follow you on it because I don't know that I do yet. We will see you guys next time. Our big disclaimer still stands. Newborn life is crazy. Keegan is already teaching again. My wife just started school. My 4-year-old just started transitional kindergarten. You're going to get an episode. It might not be every week. You might get like 3 in a long weekend when I have free time. But we're going to get you the episodes because we love you guys. I'm that Nerdy Papa on all your social media. Keegan is Bulk Ranger. And I want to clarify for everyone. I've got dibs on Kobach. I want to be the one to hold him.
No, you lost already. Solomon literally beat you this week.
Good evening. This is your Orca spokesman and human scientist savior, Dr. Stasis. There's been some confusion about some of our leadership and the filthy, evil mutants we're getting rid of, so I wanted to do some clarifying. This is Cyclops. Look at him. Clearly this is not the face of a human man. This is Nimrod. He's on Team Orcus. This is Emma Frost. What a disgusting freak. This is MODOK. He's Nito. Now, here's possibly the most disgusting mutant of all. This is Mr. Sinister. How could anyone mistake this pale freak with a suit of diamonds on his head for a human? I hope this has cleared things up.